And from the top of West Mountain in Scranton, Pennsylvania, good morning, everybody. This is 94.3 FM, The Talker. This is Sanity Check. I am Libertarian Lou. On the line is Tea Party Mike Lacey calling in from nice and warm Texas. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning. It's not quite as nice as I'd like it to be, but it'll probably be close to 60 today.
He's killing us.
Not bad.
60 degrees. Well, we parked at the bottom of the hill. Anybody that's been up to the studios here knows that it is a little bit of a hike, and coming up that last stretch sometimes gets a little hairy, as they say, Michael. And we decided to park at the bottom of the hill, both me and John DiLiberto, and of course our producer, Mr. Jenkins here, decided he's staying up top. So he said he's gonna slide on down when we're done with the show here this morning. But I'm glad that you have some nice warm weather. It looks like we're going to be getting quite a bit of snow here sometime today. So I'll be hunkered down in my bunker doing some work right from the home, and that's it, Michael. So let's. What do you want to talk about today? We have all kinds of different things going on.
Well, interesting enough, in my mail yesterday, I got an interesting letter, and it tells me I have to change my health care.
Oh, boy, it's no laughing matter, that's for sure.
I thought I was going to be able to keep what I liked, but apparently not. So,
Period.
I'm another victim of the Obamacare.
Yes, yeah.
And then I have a message, I don't know, for Luzerne County, if you could possibly, Luzerne County Council, if you could pass it on, Lou. If you remember a year or so ago, I said that low taxes and low regulations creates jobs and businesses, and that the producers will be leaving. I don't know if you remember that conversation. They kind of snickered at me. But for all our listeners in northeastern Pennsylvania, otherwise known as the Rust Belt because of our politics, in San Antonio, they did an interview with small to medium-sized businesses, Lou, where low taxes occur. And they defined that as small business of $1 million a year in sales and up. And they interviewed them. And in 2014, almost 70% of the small businesses and medium-sized businesses, Lou, will be hiring not part-time, but full-time employees for next year. So this is evident of the fact that when you keep your taxes low, you create growth, Lou. And amazingly so, it's proving to be true. How about that, Luzerne County Council, after raising taxes yet another 8%? I think Luzerne County, the folks of Luzerne County, should be there with their pitchforks and their torches circling the courthouse right now, Lou.
You're listening to Sanity Check, 888-577-4487. You're coming right out of the chute here, Michael. We were going to start off with some easier stuff, but that's good. I'm not so sure you're aware they did go ahead with that raise. I think they did raise it. I think originally 2%, right? Now they just raised it another 8% since you have left. This past week, Scranton has just come through with another nice hefty raise there, or property tax raise. It was in the 50s, maybe 57% or 54% property tax raise, and 69% for garbage pickup. I mean, it is really amazing, and we've talked all along here that, you keep raising taxes. People are going to move to where they, feel as though that they have a better chance. And I don't know. I don't know when it's going to stop or where it's going to stop. But one of the things I think what you're talking about, Michael, and certainly what's been in the news, the importance of a free and independent press, free and equal elections, these are all things that certainly we have been on our radar and will continue to be on our radar. I really don't think things change until we could accomplish that. And certainly we're going to talk a little bit about that free and independent press and free and equal elections today. Drones, of course, once again, I have a piece here in front of me. U.S. drones kills 13 in Yemen wedding. I can't even imagine, Michael, if I had 13 people in my wedding party blown up by some drone from Iran, I think I would find my way to Iran and try to get some type of revenge on that. And yet we continue to drone people around the world. One of the hypocrisies, I believe, that Mr. X is going to talk about a little bit today. And talking about hypocrisies, let's just talk about that. I'm looking at one of our local newspapers newspapers here this past week to assist wind power. Killing eagles is now okay. We could get it. We could certainly get into that. I see the DNC now is going to boycott Rush and the Daily Caller on comments about sexual harassment. I wonder if they're going to boycott MSNBC on them being racist and homophobes over there. I mean, it's really the hypocrisy. So I look forward to that. Certainly anecdotal evidence. We've talked about this before, that progressives would prefer to take their hand and put it in our pockets to make donations as opposed to stick it in their own pocket. And once again, this week comes out that one of our favorites, Jane Fonda, has not made a donation since 2006. So we got that going on. We certainly got the budget. Syria, once again, with Hirsch has been in the news. We want to talk about vote with the dollars. What do you want to start with, Michael?
Well, and I just also want to warn our people, our Christmas shoppers out there, that the mannequins in Walmart now have real eyes so they can videotape you as you're shopping. So the eyes are on you.
Oh,
this is what's going on in our culture today, Lou. So, and you're right, Lou. You started off with, we need to have free and equal elections along with a true, free, independent media. And this is what we're seeing. And we're even seeing that huge need, Lou, that, as you know, in the San Antonio area, where you've got very similar progressive behavior, which is being unbridled because of the fact there's no one in the media who will report the truth, Lou. And this is why it is so important, because with that free, independent press, the real message gets out, and then people who really want to run with a true message of independence will get their word out, Lou. So it's really something that has to be done. And yeah, as I look at the Independent Gazette and those other forms of alternative media, I look at the Independent Gazette as being traditional media with an alternative message. And this is why I think we're seeing some success in that, Lou, because people want to hear the truth. And with truth, it will set you free, as we all know.
If you do not want eyes on you as you're shopping in Walmart, you could always go to Oak Only. That's somebody I want to give a shout out to down in Dalton. If you're looking for some quality furniture and you don't want to drive all the way down to the Amish country, especially on a day like today, perhaps it would be easier just to jump on 611 and move out or go out there. We encourage people to pick up our paper, look at some of the coupons that are in our newspaper. Michael, I see we're starting to post more and more places where the paper can get picked up. I would say we're closing in on at least 100 locations locally. I know there's over 50 that are posted there now, but as we continue to update this, you could pick up the paper. There's coupons in there for Let's Eat. That's an Indian restaurant in Wilkes-Barre. Restore Auto. There's coupons in there for that, and certainly we're going to touch on Jay's Auto Detailing. There's all kinds of neat stuff, and certainly these are the people that are supporting us, and we're asking folks out there to, if you go to these locations, let them know that, you know what, you appreciate the fact that you're helping the Independent Gazette grow and grow. Certainly, I believe John's in studio with us. I just want to make sure I have all the right websites, because we are changing. We're moving ahead. Certainly, Muckraker News will be coming out. That's a whole project that we're going to be doing, Michael, come in January. But muckrakerstore.com, you could go there. You could check out some of the stuff that we do have online for sale, and plus it'll get you to our sites, which we update quite a bit here with news stories and things that we're investigating. So that's encouraging there. Michael, one of the things that you had brought up about about the newspaper itself, is some of the stories, and I did a little research this past week, and looking back, we have done some pretty neat stories, and investigative stuff, and being just a startup newspaper and small as we are at this juncture, we're certainly moving how news is being printed, at least locally, and hopefully as we continue to grow down in San Antonio, and certainly we're looking at Arlington, Virginia, and Philadelphia, and Trenton, where we're at, Poconos, that will have even more of an influence. But we have written stories and broken stories that main, well, I would say mainstream media or whatever you want to call them, has not printed. And one of the ones that I was I'm proud of is that whole Syria, that whole Syria investigation that we did, and certainly within our scope, I thought we did a very nice job. But we actually went down and interviewed people that were gassed and all of that stuff. And part of one of the things I did want to talk about this week was with Hirsch. He was the publicist, or not a journalist, that broke the My Lai incident, and a Pulitzer Award winner, and certainly well known within the journalist and newspaper industry. And he had to just break a story on Syria, and just saying that the Obama administration just came flat out and lied about everything that went on in Syria. It's just mind-boggling to me.
It is, Lou. And what's mind-boggling to me is that this huge, tremendous crisis apparently is no longer a crisis to the media. That now we'll move on to the next thing, and we're like a society that's like attention deficit disorder. We can only focus on one thing for a short period of time, and yet these are such serious events that are occurring, but it no longer serves the Progressive Party, so our media decides to move on, and I believe through direction of the Progressive Party that, look, this is one distraction made. We've got their attention off the things they should be paying attention to, and let's move to the next. But what seems to not be happening, Lou, is that this health care bill seems to still be front and center, and I'm sure that's really aggravating the administration at this point. But what concerns me, Lou, is that if we don't continue, and that's what, I know we can talk a little bit about the votes that occurred in the House today up in Washington, but, if this thing grows roots, I don't know if we're going to get rid of it, because we saw that happen with Medicaid in the 60s, where the majority of the states backed out of it, and yet here we are with the Pennsylvania budget for welfare is over 40%, Lou. So we have to be constantly on this. Now, the positive things is here in Texas, John Cornyn, who's the state senator, who really did not back Ted Cruz, is going to have a challenger in the primary. So this is what we really need to do, is to push the establishment to the limits that we have to start being heard. And as you say so many times, Lou, it's not always about the win. It's about the message that has been able to get out otherwise. So people, we have to continue to be vigilant and get the stories out to Independent Gazette, because once we research them, we'll print them, Lou.
You brought up about growing roots, and I was going to touch on this a little bit later, but since we've touched on it right now, the press release from the Libertarian Party that came out yesterday said this: Republicans who pretend to oppose Obamacare are letting it fly, refusing to defund it. If left unchecked, Obamacare will force more small businesses to close, bar Americans from needed health care, leaving diseases untreated, raise health insurance premiums, and raise out-of-pocket costs. The unaffordable burdens of Obamacare may well deal the final fatal blow to America's status as the world's leading economy. And Mike, we're seeing it here. That was one of the stories that we did go cover this past week. Costa Drugs. We're seeing more and more small businesses go out of business, and I'm afraid that once this does take root, it is going to be very, very difficult to pull it out. What's going to happen when everybody loses their insurance, which you brought up right off the start here? What's going to happen when everybody loses their insurance and they're going to be part of now a healthcare or part of this whole healthcare system run by the government, and then how do we undo it? And it's a scary proposition at this point.
And it really is, Lou, and on a personal basis for some of these seniors. For example, the letter that I received, it simply says, okay, Lou, if I was not a healthcare professional, I would have no idea what they were talking about. Zero. And then they want you to go online and do X, Y, Z, and do this and do that. Not everybody has that knowledge to be able to pull that off, Lou. And part of the letter was go out and buy yourself a tablet or a computer. Oh, okay. Everybody has the ability to drop $700 to $1,000. Lou, it's unreasonable. It's unattainable, and what's going to happen is it's going to be dumped into the citizens, the healthcare providers, Lou, which I'm seeing a whole new concept that's beginning to be talked about, Lou, where surgeries in places like Costa Rica, which is a very, very healthcare-wise, have a good system. That it's costing a third to get similar health or similar surgeries, and people are going over there to have their surgeries done, Lou. And it's not because the doctors are asking so much. It's because we have such a bureaucratic nightmare with the insurance companies, and of course with the overutilization of lawsuits, that our healthcare providers can't compete. So you're going to see not only people retiring from healthcare early, but some of them going over to these islands and being able to practice the way they like to practice, and be able to create some wealth in the process, and they should, because they have a very responsible job. So you're going to see that migration of good, intelligent, bright people of America moving to areas where they're just like I left for Texas. They're going to be leaving for places like Costa Rica. I'm seeing it already, Lou.
And that's where you're going to go to get your health care. And we've talked about that before. We're going to take a quick break, Michael. But just, before we head there, just for a minute, we just talked about, the Republicans allowing this health care to take root, or certain ones of them. I hate to be talking about Betsy Summers and perhaps what she would do, but I could almost guarantee you that if she was elected in Northeast Pennsylvania for Congress, there's a couple things that we could take to the bank. She would probably not vote for Boehner to be the, to be, the head up the Congress, the Speaker of the House. Right. Thank you there. But, we know who would. I mean, Barletta would. She would vote to defund Obamacare. These are things that you could take to the bank. And I think people need to start looking at this and saying, wait a minute. I mean, is there a real difference? And I don't see it. I mean, would she have voted for this budget? I would suspect that she would not. Barletta would have. Right. So, we have all three of our Congress people up here that voted for this thing the other day, and it's something that we're going to touch on. But when we come back, we're going to talk Syria, and then after that, we'll have Exxon.
The answer you're looking for lies right here.
Sanity Check with Tea Party Mike, Libertarian Lou, Saturday mornings, 94.3 FM The Talker. If you've been let down by the political class, then you're looking for Sanity Check Saturday mornings on 94.3 FM The Talker.
So wake me up when it's all over, when I'm wiser and I'm older. All this time I was finding myself and I didn't know I was lost. So wake me up when it's all over, when I'm wiser and I'm older.
When I'm wiser and I'm older. Or when I'm older and wiser, one of the two. You are listening to 94.3 FM, The Talker. This is Sanity Check, 888-577-4487. I am Libertarian Lou. We have Tea Party Mike Lacey, as always, calling in from Texas. Michael, let's talk Syria for a minute here. Seymour Hirsch, the legendary reporter and revealer of American war crimes such as My Lai and Abu Ghraib. Seymour Hirsch has revealed yet another bombshell of information, specifically that the Obama administration intentionally misrepresented information that was used to claim Assad and the Syrian government was responsible for the attack using sarin gas. You know what, Michael? I am really proud of the stories that we did, and we looked to go get information and try to find the truth. And that story that we did on Syria, I don't know how many other people wrote what we wrote. Certainly not a whole bunch. I know Seymour Hirsch had to break this news over in England because he just could not get too many of the mainstream presses to report on this. So if you want to be part of the Independent Gazette, what we're doing, if you feel as though that we have merit and it's something that's important, get involved with us. You can get involved with many different ways. You could send us stories, you take out a subscription, send a donation. There's all kinds of different things. Just get the paper out, pick up some copies, say you want to, drop them off to your friends. Let's start getting this information out there. But Michael, it's really important. And once again, I'm really proud about what we have been able to accomplish to this point. And this coming year, I'm looking for all kinds of neat stuff and continued growth with what we started out doing almost 2 years ago now.
It really is, Lou, and it's really interesting, and I hope that excuse me, the people of northeastern Pennsylvania could feel the cultural differences. Even though Texas is part of the United States of America, the mindset is so much different. And believe me, Texas has a lot of things going wrong with it too. But, for example, I was in a local pharmacy the other day, and there was a man with a sidearm, a gun hooked to his whole. There was no big deal.
Were you in Montana or Texas?
First of all, the guy was the size of a mountain, so nobody's going to say anything anyway. But there wasn't even, like, oh my gosh, or there's overreaction to this gun, or this, But I maintain that that's why Texas has a lower crime rate, because of the ability to know that we can carry sidearms without being pulled and handcuffed and shoved off to jail without a statement. So these are the positive things that happen in a free, independent government. And that's why we see a little taste of that still left here in Texas, Lou. And, now when you look at parts of the areas that do have higher crime, it's in those progressive movements which really bought into the Washington, D.C. deal. And that's where you're seeing the crime. And Lou, I look at this shooting that occurred again in Colorado, and yet we have a government that keeps believing they're the answer. I believe that God back in our schools is the answer. That's what I believe, and that's what most of our Americans believe. So this is why we need to have alternative messages for our people to realize that what they're hearing in the media today, whether it's on Syria, whether it's guns, is not the view of Americans, or at least the majority of Americans. It's the view I call it the view of the few, because this is what we're hearing from this progressive movement, which is not what the majority of Americans want. And I really believe in the American people, Lou, and the ability to be able to overcome this. But we really have to get off our couches, Lou, and be a part of something. I'm not saying Independent Gazette, but get up there and make a phone call to your representative. Make a phone call to your senators. Get involved. Run for school board. That is so important. And just get out there and do it. I look at folks that we have calling in that had considered possibly running for office, maybe not. But just the outrage of Americans has to be heard, and stop this press, the AP who constantly really, as you know, Lou, you've questioned the AP yourself about some of the stories that they have put out, and yet they call them experts, and yet they never interviewed experts, Lou. So we really have to be vigilant on what we're reading and hearing in the regular news sources, and focus on things like the Independent Gazette, Lou. And that's why I'm proud of what we're doing, too, because, as you know, Lou, it's a lot of work and a lot of sacrifice from guys like you and Ingrid and John and so on and so on. But it's really worth it, isn't it, Lou? It's really worth the fight.
It certainly is, and you touched on so many different things, and you're listening to Sanity Check 888-577-4487. That number is 888-577-4487 if you want to join in on the conversation. But, you talk about running for school board, running for office and all these things. And, Michael, if you don't own if you can't get that message out,
Right.
it's difficult. And that's part of, you own the media, you own the message. And that's been the focus of what we've been trying to do, mostly so that people can. The regular folk can get that message out there. Now, you also talked about the AP, and we've talked about, they don't report on things, and certainly just this past week with this Rob Levinson, and this is that private citizen supposedly that has been in Iran, and now it's come out that he actually worked for the CIA. And the AP has sat on this story for 3 years. We talk about the CIA, with these, they're droning all over the world. We don't even know. Our elected officials don't even know what's going on with these people. And yet, they're running with immunity, and droning people. And so anyway, I'm looking at this Robert Levinson piece, and I was listening to, MSNBC, yesterday with Chuck Todd, and he says, we've all been in this situation before that the government has asked us to hold these stories. Are you kidding me? We have a piece, we go all the way back with the CIA. Can we play that piece?
Do you have any people being paid by the CIA who are contributing to a major circulation American journal.
We do have people who submit pieces to American journals.
Do you have any people paid by the CIA who are working for television networks?
This, I think, gets into the kind of getting into the details, Mr. Chairman, that I'd like to get into in executive session.
At CBS, we have been contacted by the CIA. As a matter of fact, by the time I became the head of the whole News and Public Affairs operation in 1954, ships had been established, and I was told about them and asked if I'd carry on with them. I thought that it was a matter of real concern that planted stories intended to serve a national purpose abroad came home and were circulated here and believed here, because this would mean that the CIA could manipulate the news in the United States by channeling it through some foreign country. Now, we're looking at that very carefully. We have quite a lot of detailed information.
They're looking at that very carefully. This was back in the 70s, Michael, and here you go once again. I mean, but and they just come right out and say it. You know, I was watching all the news, broadcasts yesterday, and it was like, well, we got to do this. I mean, the government comes in and asks us to hold stories. I mean, what good is having a press if they're going to just print what the government wants? We have an Obama administration that now sends out pictures. You're not even, then media is not even invited to all these things. Everything is manipulated.
Yes.
And
But
yet we have a
propaganda
media
to
that
its full.
continues to just play their pictures. If I was in charge of the media, I says, you know what? Keep your stupid pictures. I don't want to see your stupid pictures. If I can't come in and take my own pictures, send them over Twitter or something. I'm certainly not going to put it on TV. I mean, they have that ability. I mean, but, there has to become some responsibility with our media, and we have to call this out. And I'm not so sure there is going to be responsibility with the media, and that's why we need a free and independent press. And certainly we're just a small little, very, very small little piece of this right now. But the health of a nation requires that we have a free and independent press and free and equal elections, which goes hand in hand, which we certainly don't have.
You're right, Lou. And, I see the headlines in the papers should read, Obama lies again. Next month, Obama lies again. Obama lies again. But no, we redefined it. It was misrepresented. All this softball stuff. And that's even if if it gets to the surface where we really know what's going on. But, and I'm not saying that this administration is the first ones to lie to the American people, because we certainly know that's not true.
That is correct.
That is correct. So, but this is just an example of where you have a press gone awry and who continually just, as you put it, wait for the permission from the government to which stories they should write. So what this does is it's not just hiding things they don't want out, but their competition is now going to be reported against things that really make them look bad or demonize them. So we're hitting it on both ends. And, as we're sitting here, Lou, I've seen 2 shooting stars. I think it's missiles that have missed me so far. So I'm just, so if I have to go quick, I'll let you know. But
Get into that bunker.
Yeah, I need to get back in there, but it is a beautiful sight anyway. But this is what really the people should be outraged at, Lou, and really start supporting those things. And that's why I think our younger folks, Lou, they call them millenniums, and I was talking to a young man in his later 20s that works with me, and he looked at me and he said, you know what? I hear all this stuff about the middle class, but our government has destroyed it. There is no more middle class. And even though that's sad, it's encouraging me, Lou, that the younger group have really found this out, not by going to our newspapers, not going to the major news sources, but really finding their stories online, where there is still truth until they start to manipulate that, Lou. So there is really truth in alternative media, and that's why we find it so important at the Independent Gazette to continue to push those stories, even though it's difficult, Lou. We find it important, like you said, to really bring the health of the nation back to to where it needs to be. So this is why the crazies, and I love that when you
The
play
crazies,
that, Lou,
that's right.
the crazies, that we continue to do that, because you have to be a little bit crazy to say, why am I doing this? Why am I doing it?
Well. Wait till it starts dawning on some of these young college students that their party money now is going to go for their either their higher health care costs or their fines. Maybe that will wake them up. On that note, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll have X, and we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk a little hypocrisy and lighten it up a little bit.
Tea Party Mike, Libertarian Lou. Their Sanity Check. Saturday mornings, 94.3 FM, The Talker. Do you want education through discussion? Do you think there's bias in the media? Has the political class let you down? Then join Sanity Check as they expose, inform, and enlighten through the new standard in talk radio. Saturday mornings, 94.3 FM, The Talker.
Listen to the word I say. The screams all sound the same.
The screams all sound the same. You're listening to 94.3 FM, The Talker. Sanity Check, Libertarian Lou, Tea Party Mike, 888-577-4487. And we know that means Mr. X is on the line. What do you think about this, Mr. X? To assist wind power, killing eagles is now okay. What about that hypocrisy?
Well, but that's always and has been the modus operandi of the government forever. It's never in the business to really help the people as much as its first priority is to make sure that itself as an entity is always in place. You know, very few people, I'm going to go get a job working in the welfare department. Let's do all we can to get people off welfare, or are we going to try to make it so that more and more people can be hired for our department? Let's keep that expanding. And that's why there's nothing as permanent as a temporary government program.
There you go. So what do you think? I brought up a few things, and certainly you talked about hypocrisy before, but I love that. I love the information I got, whether it's about Jane Fonda. I mean, I know this is probably anecdotal evidence, but Michael and X, we've said this all along. It's amazing, especially on the left. They're always wishing to take their long arms, stick it in somebody else's pocket to make themselves feel good. I mean, it's just mind-boggling to me. Here's somebody that you would think has a few dollars in her pocket, and yet, she hasn't reached into her own pocket, but she'll be very happy, Michael, to take her hand and stick it in yours to tell you what you should be donating your hard work for.
Well, and this is what most of these, let's call them entitlement programs that are out by the government are designed to do. What they allow the public to do is it's a delusion. You walk into a voting booth and you alleviate your guilty conscience from taking self-responsibility for making changes within your own community on a personal and financial level by pulling a lever for somebody, and now it's the government's problem. You want to know what homelessness is? That's my problem. You want to know what it is if people are hungry in my community? That's my problem. But when you go into a voting booth, that guilt that you carry around with you suddenly is alleviated because you pulled the lever for somebody who said they were going to do something about it. Now, of course, there's no accountability or anything like that. I've never heard of these people go, you're failing at your job, we're going to replace you. But that doesn't happen. So the myth begins, and of course there'll probably be, and unfortunately a lot of the charities are like that also. When you find out some of the charities, well over half the money that you give them is going just so that they can raise more money to pay for the salaries. We need to be more, stringent ourselves with who we donate our money to, because a lot of the charities are actually run as just finance operations.
They certainly are. Michael, you were ready to chime in there.
No, I was just thinking of, what we've talked so many times on the show, X, and when I was talking to this young man here in Texas, I explained to him that, in the 1950s, because he was saying, I'm working, I'm getting further behind. He's got a young boy he's taking care of, and his wife, and a traditional family. But he said, I don't have any extra money. I can barely make it. And I mentioned to him that in the 50s, our tax rate was like 5%. Now it's 20%. And he couldn't believe that, X. He just had no idea idea that how much of his money is being taken. I mean, he had an idea, but he didn't realize that. He assumed it was always that way. And I explained to him that, no, it wasn't always that way, that these big programs that really X, and I see it, and I know the left will deny this, but I see people who are living on the welfare program, X, that are living a higher standard of living than people working full-time just trying to make ends meet. And I find that to be sad, because the welfare program was not set up to be a standard of living or a way of living, but just to get you through tough times. And really that's what I believe its intentions were. But here I see this young man working his tail off and having a lower standard of living than those that are living on the government. And I think this is something that we need to take a real look at. I think being on the welfare program should be meant to be uncomfortable, not a way to live.
Well, and you have a good point there. Essentially, you have a crossover, depending on what part of the tax code we're looking at, whereby it actually makes sense for you not to get a job. Because if you do, the amount of money that you could make from working, let's say, that part-time job or that full-time job with low wages would never even give you, a portion of what you can collect in terms of other benefits. So we almost have a disincentive for people to work. Now, of course, there's a lot of very moral people out there that would be opposed to that and would never do that. They would resist that and would get, obviously take the job that would hurt them just so that they could get off the government programs. But you have to always remember, it doesn't take too many people or too many malicious hands to completely break down legitimate sources of welfare or charity from going through.
Guys, we got Gary from Dunmore on the line. Good morning, Gary.
Good morning, everybody. You know what, I'm calling in to get back to the Levinson and the CIA and that initial discussion. I was taking my wife to work, and of course I listen to you guys every Saturday, but I just wanted to call in, and as I told you, Screener, chime in with this. Thank God for the independent newspapers, and I think what the country's losing, and to a large degree has lost, is the ability to do investigative journalism. I don't think the journalism schools are teaching that any longer. When you talk about a media cover-up, the folks coming out of college don't know how to initiate the investigative process to begin with, let alone have the freedom to print the part of the investigation that they're finding. And I just think that's what's missing, much to the detriment of the citizens of the country. So I think it's invaluable that you have a talk radio program. I think it's even more invaluable that you get the word out there in print and that you keep it out there and that you're involved not just on a federal level, but it's at the state, it's at the local. It's what the gentleman just said about getting into that election booth. We had a 33% turnout locally. Apathy was the winner of the last election. I've said that on and on ad nauseum. So you folks, I just kudos for the job you do with the independent newspapers, with programs like this. And really, if it wasn't for talk radio and the information that's shared, really, the country would be at even a greater loss.
Well, Gary, thanks for that, and certainly you're doing stuff on the grassroots level. You have the Dunmore Community Watch, and we've been saying that too. Is that it has to come back to our local communities and getting people involved locally, and getting them, like they have a chance, like they can actually make a change, and it does. Happen on the community level, and that's what you've been doing. So we appreciate that call, and thanks for that information.
Well, thank you so much.
You betcha, Michael. X. I don't know if I could have said it better than what Gary just said, and certainly, we're doing our part, and we're certainly asking other people out there to do their part. And you can make a difference. We open up our newspapers to everybody, Michael, and X, that too. A lot of times I don't necessarily agree what's printed in our own newspaper, but we don't look at that as the barometer of what we're doing. And we don't want to always preach not only to the choir, but also that a news source is supposed to be a news source.
Right. Well, Lou, a good point that you were talking about earlier, and I'm very happy that you were able to pull these clips from the 70s, because what we need to understand is that this isn't a recent phenomenon that the government has started to do. This is what the government always has done, but in the past was able to be countered by a stronger and freer press back then. Now, don't get me started about, like, the number of stories and things that were, stymied by our own government, because we don't want to let that out. I mean, hell, just think about the amount of stuff that they were trying to do to prevent the My Lai massacre in Vietnam from actually coming out, or the stuff about Abu Ghraib that took place with that. Now, obviously, it's a tragedy, but who does it put the face on? Is it the average American that was involved in torturing Iraqis, or is it the fact that it exposes that our government is willing to go to the ends it's willing to go to pretend that it's some sort of a benevolent group of people, when in fact they are just as ruthless as some of these other institutions and countries across the world that we ourselves claim we have a higher standard on.
And that's the sadness of this all, X, because we as Americans, we as people, I know the people that we associate with, we feel like we're working for a better society, and therefore we're thinking our government is also working for a better society. And then when we look at this, and then the hypocrisy, I mean, I'm looking at that drone strike. I can't even imagine if 13 people of my family were wiped out by some drone.
Yeah, and this isn't the first wedding party that they've done this to. There was another one, I believe, like 4 years ago or 5 years ago,
yeah,
where
absolutely correct.
They killed 50 people. And this is where you go back to Ron Paul's, when he had his first presidential run, where he was talking about blowback. And the concept, again, is if you're meddling around in another country, sometimes the actions you think are preventing something from going wrong are actually setting the stage for something even worse. And what does this do? We are setting ourselves up, because remember, every person that was innocent that has been killed in a drone strike, you're dealing with people that they might become the next Osama bin Laden that we're trying. And instead of one Osama bin Laden springing up, maybe you're springing hundreds. There was a former Taliban commander that they were interviewing him through one of the foreign journalists' papers. And he had been residing in these upper areas of Pakistan. And he made a quote to the foreign press that I don't think got enough press over here in the United States. And it essentially was, the United States has done more to convert people to my way of thinking with their drone strikes than all the months and years I have spent myself personally trying to do it on my own. So our drone program is actually becoming a recruiting tool.
Yeah.
That is being used in these countries to show the hypocrisy of what we are doing. And I think there was a recent study, and this is I'm probably going to write a paper on it for the paper, which is that only 1 out of 50 people that we're killing with these drone strikes are what we would consider a high-valued target. Okay, remember, if you're just killing, the privates on the battlefield, that has no effect. The purpose of the drone strike is to kill the top generals, the head honchos, so to speak. And although we are getting some of them, we are not getting all of them to any sort of a rate that would even justify a lot of what we're doing. But this is where the suppression comes in.
And X, like you're saying here, you knock out one of these high, ranking officials, but when you knock off all, I got to tell you, I mean, if Iran came over here and wiped out my family, do you think what do you think I'm going to do?
No, absolutely.
I'm going to do whatever I can to take a boat. I'd row a boat over there. I'd get in a rowboat and get over there and do whatever I could to get some kind of, revenge or something. And where is the outrage from the progressives on the left? Where are people there saying, anti-war people saying, what the heck is going on? Is it people are so...
They've fallen into the lesser of two evils, because they go, well, we know Obama's bad with this sort of stuff, but it would have been worse if it's McCain, or it would have been worse if it's Romney. And instead of saying, you know what, both of these groups cannot be trusted, and I think the biggest one here is just basically our violation of civil liberties here.
Just everything.
The amount that comes out every single day that Snowden has been releasing. Remember, he's only released the tip of the iceberg as to how bad it is. And even just the tip of what he's releasing is outrageous. Your phones are listening to you. They've got programs so that they can turn your computer's camera on without you knowing about it. You're actually, your own computer or any smart device can now almost become a permanently installed piece of wiretapping equipment that's listening to what's going on. I mean, think about it. You have your iPhone sitting on the nightstand. They can be recording what's happening in your bedroom with you and your wife, or you and anyone else.
Well, X and Michael, it's going to take everybody to start saying, wait a minute, enough is enough. We talked, even, we're talking about the progressives on the left, where are they? But then, Michael, we also have to talk about the Christians, conservatives on the right. I mean, we've said on this show, life begins at conception and ends in Iraq. I mean, come on, guys. I mean, where do we start standing up and stop giving excuses to administrations, to people that we elect, and saying, this is fundamentally wrong. This should not be what we are as a society, to just go out and indiscriminately start blowing people up under the guise of what? So,
Lou, and we've been talking, part of the subject is being hypocrisy, and let us not forget that we have a president that won the Nobel Peace Prize, first term in office. And that's the hypocrisy of this thing, that this man has been nothing to promote peace. He's actually does the opposite, but he does it really quite in a secret way, using drones rather than using our traditional military to do that.
Well, it reminds you, Mike, also the fact that not only is this the Peace Prize winning president, but he's going over to supposedly be at a funeral for somebody that was a personal role model for him, Nelson Mandela. But when he's off camera, he's taking selfie pictures that looks like he's having a grand old time. I don't know about you, but I've really never been to too many funerals where I'm jerking around, at something like that. I remember if I did anything like that, even as a kid, my dad would have smacked me in the head, But now all the excuses are coming out trying to cover up. Oh, there's like the guy that took the picture. There's like 15 different commentaries as to what was really going on at the time.
Yeah. What's sad is that he's representing the United States of America. And, and I like to think that we are a nation of compassion. That such a great man did what he did, Mandela, and that we can at least give the man the respect to be attentive at that.
Well, and it's also brings you back to the time that they caught Bill Clinton at Ron Brown's funeral, where he's joking around and stuff, and then the cameras get to him, and then he suddenly starts to pretend by acting all serious again.
Exactly.
X, thanks for calling in today. Michael, this is for you. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll wrap up another show of Sanity Check.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. While some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
The answer you're looking for lies right here.
Sanity Check with Tea Party Mike, Libertarian Lou, Saturday mornings, 94.3 FM The Talker.
As we roll down this unfamiliar road, and although this wave is stringing us along, just know you're not alone. 'cause I'm gonna make this place your home.
And we're back. 94.3 FM The Talker. This is Sanity Check, 888-577-4487. I am Libertarian Lou, and we got Tea Party Mike. Michael, a couple things. One is we do consider this a home, and the people that are listening, certainly we're not going to agree. We don't agree with everything that happens at our own homes, but we need to have conversations, and certainly we appreciate the ability to be able to have that conversation with you out there. Certainly we offer the same thing with the Independent Gazette. Michael, we listening to that little clip that we played, we better stop respecting the status quo before it is too late. That's true. I mean, we better stop with this status quo, which kind of leads me into this next topic that I did want to touch on. We talked about a free and independent press, but we also have to have free and equal elections. And we were down in Harrisburg. The Independent Gazette was down in Harrisburg this past week. We stopped at every single state senator's office. We gave them our initiative to pass the Voter Choice Act. And I interviewed, or I was supposed to have an interview with Senator Smucker. He is the chair for the government committee, and he's responsible for getting this out of committee. I wound up talking with Matt Parado, who is his chief of staff and also the chair for the government committee, executive chair, I guess that's what he's called. And he said to get this out of committee, they're going to have to look at this and prioritize all the things that before the committee, when they rejoin back here in January. And I had to ask the guy, I said, listen, what's more, should be more of a priority than having free and equal elections? Because nothing changes. And quite honestly, listening to the conversation and going through all of this stuff, the senator is for free and equal elections, and there's so many different issues, and we have to have a comprehensive package. And you know what I told him, Michael? I said, stop. I said, stop with the 3-card Monty, the Texas two-step. I said, you have a simple couple-page bill. This could get passed, and we're going to have to put the pressure on, and we're going to have to ask our audience to put the pressure on. And I know a lot of folks out there perhaps does not want free and equal elections only because we're so entrenched. God forbid we are going to split vote. I got to tell you, Michael, the time has come that we need to start, we have to have choices. I mean, we look at, when we have a 40% turnout or 30% turnout. Gary just talked about it. Because people don't want it. There's no choice. I mean, and we hear it all the time, and I hate that, because there is a difference between the Republican and Democratic Party. As much as we say there's not, I honestly feel that there is. They don't always vote that way, but you still need choice. I don't fit into all of those things. I don't want to pay. I'm going to suggest to the Libertarian Party to send them the bill for our convention this year and maybe get some attention to why, as an independent, I have to pay for the Republicans and Democrats to pick their candidates during the primary. Mike, we got a minute left. I can't believe it flew by here. What do you got? How do you want to... Last few thoughts, Michael.
You're absolutely right. You and I talked yesterday. If Jeb Bush ends up being our candidate for, in 2014, I can't go to the polls anymore, Lou. I can't do it. I can't vote for the progressive, and I can't vote for this guy. So it is a waste of vote. I never thought I would say at this point that I would not go to the voting booth.
It is so scary what's going on.
It is, but I look at somebody like Gary Johnson who has really something to say, and our media won't let him out there. This guy is a viable candidate that they will not allow out there, Lou. And this is what we have to call up Harrisburg and tell them you want that bill out of committee.
You're timed out, Michael. Finish it up, my friend.
Hey, God bless all.